So how do you report information about your participants? Now, we'll deal with the language of this in a subsequent video, but just to state, it is participants, not subjects. But if you want to know more about why that is the case, go and watch one of the videos which is to do with terminology in report writing. So one of the things you have to think about is when you're writing out the method and you've written the study design, from the study design, the next thing that we report, remember that everything's in kind of a logical order, is we report about our participants. And there are a number of things you have to remember. That again, it's about repeatability. Somebody else has to be able to follow what you have done. And so there are a number of things that go within this. The first thing that everybody tends to think about is information about their participants, what we call the demographic data. So if you're using humans, or even if you're working with animals as well, you'd report this kind of data. So typically things like age, mass, height, and remember that when you're reporting these, you're going to report not individual data, you're going to report the mean, because it is describing the population. So irrespective of whether you've used randomization or matched pairs design or whatever you've used in terms of your research design, you'd always describe these demographics. And if you're citing the mean, you must cite the standard deviation, because the mean merely tells us what it is, the mean, that's the average value. What we need to know is what is the spread within that group. Also try and describe, for example, if there's been any form of selection process, how were they selected? So for example, what did we use? What is called snowball sampling? Did we use any kind of specific approach to recruit the participants? So we would need to state that. And then finally, what are the inclusion and exclusion criteria? If there were these, what were they? And you provide examples of these. So again, it clears up for the reader who the participants were, and also it clears up for them that the processes that were taken in terms of recruiting those participants to the study. So let's have a look at the way this would be written in a method section. So here we've got our method, we've got our study design, and what you can now see is the brief section which is on the participants. So it tells us an awful lot here. So participants, n equals 42. So that is telling us n is the abbreviation for number. So n equals 42, physically active participants, n equals 11 females and n equals 31 males. And what we've got here is we've got their ages, we've got their height, and we've got their mass. And then it states agreed to participate. Now, in this example here, there are no inclusion criteria or selection criteria. Why? Because this is reported from a laboratory study that was done with a group of students as part of an in-class practical session. But if you had, for example, gone and actually recruited people, and you've got an inclusion criteria, so it might be that you say that you only want people with who are physically active. You'd have to define what you mean by physically active. Or you only want to recruit elite athletes. You have to define what you mean by elite. So it becomes a repeatable process. So it's information that is there. Now this is quite briefly written because of the word count that's been used in this piece of work, which is 1,000 words in total. But all the information is there. We know how many were in the study, how many were males and females, and we've got the general demographics. So those are what you need to think about when you are putting together your method section.